that every piece of paper proving you own your house, your land, or your business has simply vanished. On July 14, 2026, that became reality for 19 million Romanian citizens. The ANCPI system, the National Digital Registry housing the country's entire property ownership records, went completely dark. The immediate economic fallout was severe. Notaries stopped validating documents. Banks stopped processing mortgages. With the real estate market frozen, conservative estimates showed up to 100 million euros bleeding out of the Romanian economy every single day. The core registry, the digital proof of an entire nation's wealth, had been systematically erased. When a NATO member's critical infrastructure suffers a total collapse, the immediate assumption points to a highly coordinated state-sponsored cyber warfare operation. But investigators quickly identified the real attacker, an opportunistic, independent hacker operating out of North Africa under the name Byte2Breach. He used basic, commercially available tools and stolen employee passwords, rather than complex zero-day exploits or military-grade malware. This raises a glaring question. How did a solitary, financially motivated cybercriminal entirely dismantle a national database that took 2 decades and 135 million euros to build? Over 20 years, Romania spent 135 million euros developing the e-Terra property registry. Yet out of that massive investment, only 305,000 euros, a microscopic 0.2%, was allocated to cybersecurity. Standard industry guidelines recommend spending at least 15% of the IT budget on defense. By prioritizing visible user features over invisible protections, the government accumulated security debt, a compounding risk that grows larger every time a system expands without the necessary safeguards to protect it. Romania constructed a modern digital fortress, but failed to implement the most basic identity verification tools required to defend a national asset. The attack began with a simple login. Byte2Breach entered the system using valid employee credentials, likely purchased on a dark web marketplace or stolen through a phishing email. Without multi-factor authentication, the system accepted a single stolen password as absolute proof of identity. Once inside, the hacker mapped the internal architecture, eventually siphoning out terabytes of sensitive citizen data and the source code for the entire registry. The system lacked internal segmentation to block movement between databases and had no active monitoring software to flag the massive data theft. The infrastructure was blind to its own compromise. The operators only learned they had been breached when the hacker sent a message demanding a ransom. Following international security protocols regarding cyber extortion, the Romanian government refused to pay. In retaliation, Byte2Breach executed a destructive script that systematically deleted all primary property records across the e-Terra network. Backup servers are meant to be the final safety net, but ANCPI kept theirs connected to the main network. They lacked a physical air gap to isolate the copies from the primary systems. By leaving the backups physically connected to the compromised network, the agency ensured that a single breach would result in a permanent catastrophe. Romania is now attempting to rebuild its national history from decades-old paper records, while Byte2Breach lists the stolen data for sale on dark web forums. This sequence, stealing the data, destroying the source, and then selling the remains, marks a shift into a more destructive era of cybercrime. Security experts categorize this as ransomware 3.0. Early attacks just locked files. Later versions added data leaks to pressure victims. This latest tier focuses on total infrastructure annihilation to maximize leverage. This triple extortion model targets the very survival of a government agency. If the victim refuses to pay for the return of their data, the attacker destroys the original system and sells the stolen copies to the highest bidder. Attackers are entirely weaponizing a nation's own digital reliance against it. The collapse of ANCPI serves as a warning to other nations attempting to rapidly replace paper bureaucracies with digital e-governments. Developing nations often fund sleek, visible user interfaces while ignoring the expensive, unseen security infrastructure required to protect them. Previous historic attacks have caused massive disruption to supply chains and hospitals, but they have rarely resulted in the total and permanent erasure of a nation's sovereign data. Digitalization creates a massive single point of failure. If a nation digitizes its core infrastructure without aggressively funding its defense, it is simply building a time bomb.